Hey everyone, so One Piece chapter 1006 just came out, and sure, this was not a rooftop chapter, but this was probably just about the closest you can get in terms of hype to a rooftop chapter without it actually being a rooftop chapter, you know what I mean? Because we just got to see probably at least half a chapter of Marco, one of the most exciting Devil Fruit users in the entire series, just go all out with his Phoenix Fruit. I think we got to see probably close to the full range of what the Phoenix Fruit can do with this chapter. And I think this was just something that was a very pleasant surprise, a long time coming. In my opinion, I had just been kind of assuming that we would get to see Marco kind of, stalemate the other two in, one-off background panels and such, like just letting us know that Marco is holding off King and Queen without actually delving too much into it. But this was a fully choreographed fight between Marco versus King and Queen at the same time, using many different moves, many different techniques. It was just way more than I could have asked for from Marco from this war. So I'm still surprised that Marco is even able to do this, because I think a lot of us before this all started were kind of thinking, okay, how do some of these commanders stack up? We haven't really seen any Yonko on Yonko action throughout the series up till this point in time. We don't really know how their crews stack up, how they compare. I have long personally held by the belief, I think a lot of people have jumped to the conclusion that every Yonko crew must be pretty much equal. That's what I was hearing a lot before, the events of Wano started. Every Yonko crew must be roughly equal. The commanders probably line up very similarly, very similar lower ranks and everything like that. I never held by that belief because I just don't think that was ever really stressed or implied in the series. My understanding was simply that the way the Four Emperor system works is that every crew needs to be close enough in manpower, firepower, etc. to the other crews that any of the two fighting would leave even the victor very vulnerable to destruction from a third party or something like that. Basically, the stalemate doesn't mean that A is equal to B is equal to C is equal to D. It's just that everyone's close enough. These are four superpowers that are close enough that it's just not wise to take on each other, because even if you win, that would still leave you in a bad enough state that your empire is probably just going to fall apart or get, ransacked and destroyed by a rival empire, etc., etc. We even almost saw a glimpse of this happen with, when Whitebeard chose to attack Marineford. He would not have been able to successfully do that if Shanks had not decided that I'm actually going to shield you from third parties in this situation and allow you to take that step of going to Marineford, because what would have happened if Kaido tried to attack the Whitebeard pirates? Would Whitebeard have then ended up in a situation where his forces are too depleted to go onwards to Marineford and he should even have a chance at saving Ace, right? So, long story short, basically, this is the first time we're getting to see commanders from certain crews fight each other, and what we're seeing is that it's not as though... First of all, let me say, I think King and Queen can both do better. This is definitely Marco's time to shine. Oda's giving Marco some shine, basically, because what we've seen generally is Marco hasn't really, he's had some really good showings against really strong characters, but he has been used as a sort of measuring stick in the past, look how strong, Marco's close to the Admirals, but it doesn't seem like he's quite there, at least to a lot of people, right? Marco was used to show how strong Blackbeard was, for example. Marco, it seemed like, he could hold off Big Mom for a moment, but she did ultimately catch him, etc., right? So this was Marco's time to shine and basically show that, look, if I'm up against other commanders, he can hold down the fort pretty well by himself, even against, King and Queen, Kaido's strongest and second strongest subordinates, which is pretty impressive. I'm sure that King and Queen are going to do better in the long run. I'm sure that Marco cannot keep this up indefinitely. I wouldn't be surprised if things came down to a Marco and King 1v1, and we did see that they are somewhat roughly equal. But all that is to say that basically, Marco himself has gotten a lot of outside hype beyond just being, the first commander of Whitebeard's crew. And it's just good to see that it's not as, clear-cut as I think a lot of people talked about, that, every first commander has to be exactly equal to every other first commander, and that's just what first commander level is, and then there's second commander level, and then there's third commander. It's not as clear-cut as that. Marco, I think, has always been pretty talked up by a lot of names in the New World, even outside of just being the first commander of the Whitebeard Pirates. So it's cool to see him get so much love in this chapter. Again, all that being said, by the way things were looking for him by the end of his fight, I think he's close to the end of his rope, and he's having to use his flames to help out the Wano Alliance, and he's having to fight King, and he's having to fight Queen. that's just a lot on his plate, and Perospero just showed up. So I think this was basically Marco's big moment. Hopefully, if anything happens and, maybe Queen gets passed off to somebody else like Sanji, maybe Perospero gets passed off to somebody else, maybe a resurgent Carrot, for example, we still get to see some more Marco action. I love me some Marco. We still get to see some more Marco action against, just 1v1 versus King or whatever. But I think this is probably the most impressive he's going to look against, two Yonko commanders at the same time that we're going to get to see so far. So, good stuff there. I will say in terms of King and Queen, it's cool to see that King and Queen both definitely, they have a lot of Cybertronic, is that the word? Cybertronic? Cybernetic? I think Cybertronic enhancements to them, so it's not just that they're dinosaurs, they're robot dinosaurs, which is pretty cool, right? Last chapter we saw King using, I guess, guns, machine guns, something like that, out of his wings, shooting at Marco. In this chapter we saw Queen use a beam. For a moment I was a little shocked. I was just like, Queen has a beam? Isn't that kind of crazy? Like, are we going that far that Queen can shoot beams now? And I'm like, what am I even talking? Like, Frankie has a beam. It's not that crazy to have a beam nowadays. You know what I mean? Like, of course, Queen's gonna have a beam. Pacifistas have beams. Frankie has beams. Everybody gets beams nowadays. So, beams are, they're a dime a dozen at this point. So I'm not surprised that Queen has, this dinosaur beam, attachment or whatever. Cool to see that he's got a lot more up his sleeve than just the Brachial Bomber. I will say I was... when Queen used the Brachial Bomber back on Big Mom, I was just like, it's the best that Queen can do, huh? It's just fall head first from a high place onto your opponent. That's Queen's ultimate move. Not saying it's not still his ultimate move, but it's just cool to see that Queen has been showing a bigger range of abilities thanks to his Cybertronic enhancements these last couple chapters. We've seen his neck extend. We've seen him shoot a beam. I'm sure we're going to get to see him use other weapons that are just, adding more versatility to his, fighting style than just dropping on people's heads. So, good stuff there. I am hoping to see them just look a little better in the coming chapters, because I do think we are supposed to view them as very intimidating powerhouse villains for the Beast Pirate side. So, if this was Marco's time to shine, then I do hope that next couple chapters we do get to see what King and Queen can really do. I'm interested to see if, any of the Beast Pirates are going to use awakened forms, or if we're supposed to view this as, okay, this is already what their awakened zone forms are. I would hope that's not the case. I would hope that we get a big moment where we get to see some, if not all, of the major Beast Pirates, the Tobiropo, the Commanders, and then Kaido himself actually go into awakened zone form. And on that note, I wonder if Marco is already using his awakened form or not. It's hard to tell because the Phoenix Fruit just seems so different from so many of the other zones. In my opinion, the Phoenix Fruit is up there for the coolest fruit in the series, but you can make a case for a lot of things. So, Marco, King, and Queen stuff aside, let's talk about Perospero, because Perospero did show up at the end of that whole exchange between Marco and King and Queen. The Perospero Carrot stuff, I was very, I promised myself I'm not going to talk about the raid ending in failure or anything like that. So let's just pretend that this is still the final battle, right? If you're pretending that this is still the final battle, I don't even know why I say pretend. It's probably, very possibly the final battle, right? So, assuming this is the final battle, it's interesting to me that, Perospero took down Carrot, at least seemingly took down Carrot off screen. Assuming that this is the final battle, I would guess that Carrot does get back in the action somehow. Maybe somehow the moon... I would assume she would have to be in Sulong form to be effective, right? So, maybe the weather stops being so bad. Maybe something happens weather-wise to open up the moon again and allow her to fight again. Because I would assume that she can't really do anything without Sulong form, right? And it's just more fun to see her fight in Sulong form. So if this is going to be her moment to get revenge on Perospero, and, she's going to go through something, get stronger a little bit, I would assume that she would have to bounce back and the moon opening up again would be involved. If not, then it's, if this doesn't happen, then that's good support for the raid not succeeding, but whatever. We won't talk about that anymore, okay? At least this chapter review. So, besides that, it's hard to tell exactly where the Carrot situation is going to go. I think the safe assumption, the straightforward assumption, is that she's going to get back up. she is going to get access to her Sulong form again somehow. The one alternative would be if Perospero somehow ends up getting paired up as a matchup for Chopper, or we see Chopper and Carrot fight Perospero. I view these as possibilities just because Chopper and Carrot had their storylines were very tied together throughout Whole Cake Island. Chopper still doesn't have a significant opponent. But, you know, Chopper doesn't really have a strong tie to Perospero the way Carrot does. Although I'm glad that it was called out by Perospero this chapter that Carrot's desire for revenge against him is kind of just, it's kind of misguided, because if you're Perospero, like, sure, you're a bad guy, but these people came into your home, into your territory, they invaded your territory, they ruined your tea party, they ruined your nice tea party, they ruined all that, then this guy tries to attack you, and so you capture him, then he blows himself up, which is not your fault at all, he just blows himself up. So this guy blows himself up, you now have no arm, you've lost your arm forever, so you've crippled yourself, you've become crippled because of this guy kamikazeing, and now you have to walk around with a candy arm for the rest of your life, which is just one of the worst attachments you could have to your body imaginable. So you're just walking around with a candy arm for the rest of your life because this guy blew himself up. And now this girl is coming and saying that she's mad at you because that guy died and she wants to get revenge. And you're just sitting there with a candy arm. You're like, is this not enough? How much more do you want from me? So Perospero, you know, I can see his side of things. I hope that Carrot... I hope it's addressed from Carrot's perspective a little bit, but it's very possibly not going to be. You know, how unreasonable her desire for revenge is. I guess it's not unreasonable, it's more of an emotion thing. You know, Perospero is still technically a bad guy, so I'm not going to fault her for wanting to go after Perospero, but, you know, let's wait and see how these things go. As for whether Perospero will be the deciding factor in, like, Marco going down or not, you know, if he's the straw that breaks the camel's back, if he steps into the fight, we'll have to wait and see on that as well, because I guess that's an obvious thing to say, right? We have to wait and see. Yeah, duh, we have to wait till next chapter to find out. But I do wonder if, like, I would prefer if King and Queen themselves prove to be too much for Marco, because if it turns out to be a case where, you know, Marco is handling those two and is actually, it looks like he can handle them for a while longer, and then you need to add in Perospero before Marco, you know, has to switch off or ask for help or get assistance or whatever, then that would seem like a little bit much. I would prefer that somebody else step in, maybe a resurgent Carrot, maybe Chopper or something like that, to maybe even Sanji. We'll get to Sanji in one moment. But somebody else step in and actually, you know, challenge Perospero before Perospero has to jump in on this fight or whatever. So as for Sanji, I would have very high hopes if you're a Sanji fan right now, because just the way that his dialogue went at the beginning of the chapter, it definitely feels like Oda's prepping him for something pretty big. You know, where is Sanji going to be needed most? Because Sanji is, as easy as it is to forget, as much as Oda downplays him or throws him under the bus, Sanji is a big factor in the Strahd's victory if he's used correctly, right? If he's matched up with the right opponent, if he's put in the right position, etc. So the fact that Sanji is openly talking about, okay, I could be here and be useful, I could be there, I could be useful, what's the most useful way for me to affect this fight? I do hope that Oda has a solution, you know, that is a little more exciting than just picking one of the two spots. But even if it is, as long as it's done well, I'm cool with it. But just the way that Sanji's kind of hyping up, like, okay, how am I going to make my entrance? How am I going to make my move to have the biggest impact? I would have high hopes if you're a Sanji fan. My only hope is that he doesn't end up fighting, you know, just Jack as his 1v1 fight, because Jack has also been kind of downplayed as a threat throughout this arc. So, Sanji stuff aside, Momonosuke, Shinobu, Yamato, that stuff's happening. There's not much more to say on that end. That stuff's happening. I don't know if Sanji's going to go try and help them or anything like that at the end of the day, because I would expect Yamato to be capable enough to protect Momonosuke, right? Whereas the Scabbards are fairly injured. But I hope Sanji doesn't go to the Scabbards either, because I just don't want to see him fighting Jack. So, all of that stuff aside, let's talk about the Ice Oni stuff, and Hyogoro. It was really cool to see Hyogoro, you know, back in his prime. I made a video towards the beginning of the Wano arc talking about how I expected, it was some weird stuff, but I still view it as a possibility, but it was definitely some weird stuff. I was talking about how there might be some age shifting in Wano, where we might get to see, you know, Momonosuke aged up, or Tama aged up, or Hyogoro aged down because Hyogoro had talked about wanting to fight in his prime again. So I was totally wrong about the way that would have happened, which I thought that Jewelry Bonnie would have been involved, but instead, this Ice Oni situation triggered, or not triggered, but it allowed Hyogoro to access, you know, or I guess age down or something like that, but it allowed him to fight in his prime again, which was really cool to see. Unfortunately, it doesn't look like we're going to see him fight against anyone particularly strong. Hyogoro versus Perospero? No, that'd be weird. They have no connection. I guess you don't really need a connection for... Not all of these fights need connections, I suppose, but it would just seem a little out of the blue, but I could see it as a possibility. Anyway, yeah, it's just cool seeing that Hyogoro was, in fact, very, very strong. He's even speculating what would have happened if he had helped Oden fight against Kaido. I don't think... I don't think the outcome would have been that different, because Oden didn't lose in the first place because he wasn't strong enough. It was because, you know, he got tricked. So I don't think lack of strength was the reason they lost to Kaido. But it would have been, you know, cool. It would be cool to see just how strong Prime Hyogoro actually is, because we never really got a picture or hint of that throughout the, you know, the Oden flashback even. So hopefully Hyogoro gets to keep fighting. I assume he will, because I assume that this is build up for Chopper's big moment of solving the Ice Oni situation. I had complained earlier about how I felt like the entire Ice Oni situation kind of happened a little too quickly. I'm very happy that this chapter, it was actually still played up as... It just felt as though it had been solved very quickly with the flame solution, essentially, and then it's just Chopper working on the antidote. I did like that this chapter is actually playing up that, no, this is still a problem, and this chapter actually did have a feeling of, you know, stakes, tension, etc., because the Ice Oni situation was treated a little more with more severity than it had been, I think, in the past. In the past, it just felt like introduce problem, okay, check off the box of solving the problem. This does feel like good build-up. I hope to next chapter, where Chopper will solve the Ice Oni situation, and I hope that that moment coincides with Chopper finally getting his matchup, you know? So it can be a big moment for Chopper in terms of solving that problem, and then hopefully followed up with, okay, now that that's out of the way for Chopper, he can be matched up with whoever his opponent is going to be. So that's all for this video. I will talk to you all later.